Question 1. The monitoring system demonstrates that a client in Dubai is seeking to purchase a property and has expressed a preference for a mortgage with the lowest possible initial monthly payments. Considering the client's stated preference and the need to act in their best interest, which of the following approaches best aligns with professional ethical standards and Dubai's real estate regulations for a broker? Option A. Conduct a detailed assessment of the client's financial stability, risk tolerance, and long-term financial goals. Then explain the implications of fixed-rate, adjustable-rate, and interest-only mortgages, guiding them towards the most suitable option based on this comprehensive understanding. Option B. Advise the client to explore personal loans or other unsecured financing options to cover the difference between their budget and the higher initial payments of a fixed-rate mortgage. Option C. Immediately recommend an adjustable-rate mortgage, emphasizing its lower initial interest rates and payments, as this directly addresses the client's stated preference for lower initial costs. Option D. Propose an interest-only mortgage, highlighting its significantly reduced initial monthly payments, as this most directly satisfies the client's desire for the lowest possible outgoing. Correct answer is A. Conduct a detailed assessment of the client's financial stability, risk tolerance, and long-term financial goals, then explain the implications of fixed-rate, adjustable-rate, and interest-only mortgages, guiding them towards the most suitable option based on this comprehensive understanding. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate broker in Dubai to assess the suitability of different mortgage types for a client, without solely relying on the client's immediate stated preference. The broker must consider the client's long-term financial stability and risk tolerance, aligning with the ethical obligations under the Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations and the Real Estate Regulatory Agency (RERA) guidelines, which emphasize client best interests and transparency. The best professional approach involves thoroughly understanding the client's financial situation, risk appetite, and future financial plans before recommending a mortgage type. This includes explaining the distinct characteristics, benefits, and risks of fixed-rate, adjustable-rate, and interest-only mortgages. For instance, a fixed-rate mortgage offers payment predictability, which is crucial for clients seeking stability, while an adjustable-rate mortgage might appeal to those expecting income growth or planning a shorter ownership period, but carries the risk of payment increases. An interest-only mortgage can lower initial payments but significantly increases long-term repayment burdens and risks. This comprehensive assessment ensures the client makes an informed decision that aligns with their financial well-being, fulfilling the broker's duty of care and fiduciary responsibility. An incorrect approach would be to immediately recommend an adjustable-rate mortgage solely because the client expresses a desire for lower initial payments. This fails to adequately address the inherent risk of fluctuating interest rates and potential payment increases, which could lead to financial distress for the client, violating the principle of acting in the client's best interest as mandated by RERA. Another incorrect approach is to push for an interest-only mortgage because it offers the lowest initial monthly outlay. This overlooks the significant long-term financial burden and the fact that the principal amount remains unchanged, potentially leaving the client with a substantial debt at the end of the term without having built equity. This is ethically unsound as it prioritizes a short-term perceived benefit over the client's long-term financial security. Recommending a fixed-rate mortgage without understanding the client's capacity to handle potential future interest rate changes, especially if the client's income is volatile, could also be problematic. While generally a safer option, it might not be the most suitable if the client's financial projections indicate a strong ability to manage variable payments and benefit from potential rate decreases. The professional reasoning process should involve a structured client needs analysis, followed by a clear explanation of all available mortgage options, highlighting their respective risks and benefits in the context of the client's specific circumstances. This empowers the client to make an informed choice, supported by the broker's expert guidance and adherence to regulatory requirements. Question 2. System analysis indicates that a real estate broker in Dubai, UAE, is assisting a client in securing financing for a property purchase. The client has provided financial statements and income declarations that appear to be on the higher side, and they are eager to proceed with the loan application quickly to secure a desirable property. What is the most prudent and compliant course of action for the broker in managing the loan underwriting and approval process? Option A. Pressure the client to inflate their declared income or assets to meet the lender's criteria, believing this will expedite the loan approval. Option B. Recommend a loan amount that significantly exceeds the client's verified repayment capacity, based solely on the client's expressed desire for a larger property. Option C. Diligently verify all submitted client financial documentation and ensure it accurately reflects their true financial standing and borrowing capacity, in strict accordance with the UAE Central Bank's guidelines on credit risk management and lending practices, advising the client on realistic loan amounts based on their verified financial profile and prevailing market conditions. Option D. Accept the client's self-reported income and asset figures without independent verification, assuming that the bank's underwriting process will catch any discrepancies. The correct answer is C. Diligently verify all submitted client financial documentation and ensure it accurately reflects their true financial standing and borrowing capacity, in strict accordance with the UAE Central Bank's guidelines on credit risk management and lending practices, advising the client on realistic loan amounts based on their verified financial profile and prevailing market conditions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a real estate broker in Dubai, UAE, concerning the loan underwriting and approval process. The challenge lies in balancing the client's desire for a quick transaction with the regulatory requirements and ethical obligations of ensuring a sound and compliant loan approval. Brokers must navigate the complexities of lender requirements, property valuation, and the potential for misrepresentation or undue influence, all while adhering to the specific regulations governing real estate transactions and financial services in Dubai. Failure to do so can lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and harm to the client. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves diligently verifying all submitted client financial documentation and ensuring it accurately reflects their true financial standing and borrowing capacity, in strict accordance with the UAE Central Bank's guidelines on credit risk management and lending practices. This includes cross-referencing information provided by the client with independent sources, where possible, and advising the client on realistic loan amounts based on their verified financial profile and prevailing market conditions. This approach is correct because it prioritizes transparency, accuracy, and compliance with regulatory frameworks designed to prevent over-indebtedness and ensure the stability of the financial system. It upholds the broker's duty of care to the client and their responsibility to facilitate legitimate transactions. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves accepting the client's self-reported income and asset figures without independent verification, assuming that the bank's underwriting process will catch any discrepancies. This is professionally unacceptable, as it abdicates the broker's responsibility to ensure the accuracy of information presented to the lender, and could facilitate a loan based on false pretenses, violating principles of due diligence and potentially contravening UAE banking regulations related to responsible lending. Another incorrect approach is to pressure the client to inflate their declared income or assets to meet the lender's criteria, believing this will expedite the loan approval. This is unethical and illegal, as it constitutes misrepresentation and fraud. It directly violates the UAE's laws against financial misconduct and undermines the integrity of the loan underwriting process, exposing both the broker and the client to severe penalties. A further incorrect approach is to recommend a loan amount that significantly exceeds the client's verified repayment capacity, based solely on the client's expressed desire for a larger property. This demonstrates a failure to act in the client's best interest and a disregard for responsible lending principles. It can lead to the client's default, financial distress, and potential legal action against the broker for professional negligence and breach of fiduciary duty under UAE real estate and consumer protection laws. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach that begins with a thorough understanding of the client's financial situation, supported by verifiable documentation. This understanding must then be cross-referenced with the lender's requirements and the broker's knowledge of market realities. Any discrepancies or potential issues should be addressed transparently with the client, and advice should be grounded in regulatory compliance and ethical considerations. The ultimate goal is to facilitate a loan that is both approved and sustainable for the client, thereby protecting all parties involved and upholding the integrity of the real estate and financial sectors in Dubai. Question 3. The audit findings indicate that your real estate brokerage in Dubai has not adequately prepared its agents for the recent amendments to the Dubai Land Department's property registration procedures. What is the most effective and compliant strategy to address this oversight and ensure future adherence to Dubai's real estate laws? Option A. Post a notice on the company intranet informing agents of the new registration rules and expect them to integrate these changes into their workflow without further formal instruction. Option B. Instruct all agents to independently review the official Dubai Land Department circulars and update their understanding of the new registration protocols. Option C. Develop and disseminate detailed internal guidelines that clarify the new registration requirements, followed by mandatory, comprehensive training sessions for all agents on the updated procedures and their practical application. Option D. Provide agents with a brief overview of the key changes in the registration process and instruct them to adapt their current practices accordingly. The correct answer is C. Develop and disseminate detailed internal guidelines that clarify the new registration requirements, followed by mandatory, comprehensive training sessions for all agents on the updated procedures and their practical application. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a real estate broker in Dubai to navigate the implementation of new regulations concerning property registration. The challenge lies in ensuring that all agents within the brokerage are not only aware of the changes, but also understand their practical implications for client interactions and transaction processing, while also adhering to the specific legal framework of Dubai. Misinterpretation or failure to comply can lead to significant legal repercussions and damage to the brokerage reputation. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a proactive and comprehensive approach to regulatory implementation. This includes developing clear internal guidelines that translate the new Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations into actionable steps for agents. It also necessitates conducting mandatory training sessions for all agents to ensure they understand the updated requirements for property registration, including any new documentation or procedural changes. This approach directly addresses the regulatory mandate by ensuring informed compliance and operational efficiency. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves relying solely on agents to independently research and interpret the new DLD regulations. This is professionally unacceptable as it outsources a critical compliance responsibility and increases the risk of inconsistent understanding and application of the law. Agents may lack the legal expertise to accurately interpret complex regulatory language, leading to errors in property registration and potential breaches of Dubai real estate law. Another incorrect approach is to only provide a summary of the new regulations without detailed guidance on how to implement them in daily practice. This fails to equip agents with the practical knowledge needed to comply. Without specific instructions on updated forms, submission processes, or client communication protocols related to registration, agents may inadvertently violate the spirit or letter of the DLD regulations, exposing the brokerage to penalties under Dubai's real estate laws. A further incorrect approach is to assume that existing registration procedures are sufficient and only update them if specific issues arise. This reactive stance is professionally unsound. It neglects the proactive duty of care required by real estate brokers to ensure their operations are compliant with current legislation. Waiting for problems to emerge can result in past transactions being non-compliant, leading to retrospective legal challenges and fines under Dubai's regulatory framework. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and systematic approach to regulatory changes. This involves understanding the source of the regulation, in this case, the DLD, identifying its impact on current operations, developing clear internal policies and procedures, and ensuring thorough training for all staff. A robust compliance framework requires continuous monitoring and adaptation to legal requirements. When faced with new regulations, the decision-making process should prioritize clarity, comprehensiveness, and verifiable understanding among all team members to mitigate risks and uphold professional standards. Question 4. The assessment process reveals that a real estate broker in Dubai is aware of significant structural issues in a property they are marketing, which have not been disclosed by the seller. The broker is concerned that disclosing these issues will deter potential buyers and reduce their commission. Which of the following represents the most ethically sound and legally compliant approach for the broker under the UAE's real estate regulatory framework? Option A. Proactively disclose the known structural issues to all potential buyers, advising them to seek independent professional assessments. Option B. Withhold information about the structural issues from potential buyers to facilitate a quicker sale and secure the commission. Option C. Advise potential buyers to conduct their own thorough inspections without mentioning any known structural defects beforehand. Option D. Only disclose the structural issues if a potential buyer specifically asks about the property's structural integrity. The correct answer is A. Proactively disclose the known structural issues to all potential buyers, advising them to seek independent professional assessments. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge faced by real estate brokers in the UAE, balancing client interests with the ethical and legal obligations mandated by the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a broker to navigate potential conflicts of interest and uphold transparency, which are cornerstones of RERA regulatory framework for real estate professionals. Careful judgment is required to ensure all parties are treated fairly and that transactions are conducted with integrity. The best professional approach involves proactively disclosing all known material facts about the property to potential buyers, even if those facts might negatively impact the seller's perceived value or the broker's commission. This approach is correct because it aligns directly with RERA emphasis on transparency and fair dealing. Article 12 of the RERA Code of Conduct for Real Estate Brokers mandates that brokers must act in the best interests of their clients, while also being honest and transparent with all parties involved in a transaction. Disclosing known defects, such as structural issues or significant maintenance requirements, ensures that buyers can make informed decisions, thereby preventing future disputes and upholding the broker's professional reputation and adherence to RERA consumer protection mandates. An incorrect approach involves withholding information about significant property defects from potential buyers, hoping to secure a sale quickly. This is ethically unacceptable and violates RERA principles of honesty and fair representation. Such an action could lead to legal repercussions for the broker and the seller, including fines and potential license suspension, as it constitutes a misrepresentation of the property's condition. Another incorrect approach is to only disclose defects if directly asked by the buyer. While this might seem like a way to avoid outright lying, it fails to meet the proactive disclosure obligation. RERA expects brokers to volunteer material information that a reasonable buyer would want to know, not to wait for specific inquiries. This passive approach can still be considered a form of deception by omission. Finally, an incorrect approach is to suggest that the buyer conduct their own independent inspection without disclosing any known issues beforehand. While encouraging independent inspections is good practice, it does not absolve the broker of their duty to disclose known material facts. Failing to disclose known defects before or during the buyer's inspection process is a breach of trust and regulatory requirements. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves understanding RERA Code of Conduct thoroughly, maintaining a commitment to full disclosure of all material facts, and always acting with integrity and in the best interests of all parties involved in a real estate transaction. When in doubt, it is always best to err on the side of transparency and seek clarification from RERA or legal counsel. Question 5. Process analysis reveals that a prospective buyer in Dubai is inquiring about private mortgage insurance, PMI, as a means to secure their home loan. Considering the regulatory landscape governed by the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA, and the UAE Central Bank, what is the most appropriate course of action for a Dubai-based real estate broker? Option A. Explain PMI as a mechanism that guarantees loan approval, similar to its function in other international markets, to reassure the buyer. Option B. Recommend that the buyer independently seek PMI from an international insurance provider to supplement their mortgage application. Option C. Advise the buyer that PMI is a mandatory requirement for all mortgage applications in Dubai to ensure loan approval. Option D. Clearly explain that private mortgage insurance, PMI, is not a standard or directly regulated product in Dubai's real estate financing market, and focus on advising the buyer on the applicable UAE central bank LTV ratios and DLD mortgage registration processes. The correct answer is D. Clearly explain that private mortgage insurance, PMI, is not a standard or directly regulated product in Dubai's real estate financing market, and focus on advising the buyer on the applicable UAE central bank LTV ratios and DLD mortgage registration processes. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate broker in Dubai to navigate the complexities of financing options for a buyer, specifically concerning the implications of private mortgage insurance, PMI, within the UAE's regulatory framework. The challenge lies in accurately advising the client on the nature and implications of such insurance, which may not be a standard or directly equivalent product in the UAE market as it is in other jurisdictions. Misinformation or a lack of understanding could lead to financial detriment for the buyer and reputational damage for the broker. Careful judgment is required to ensure advice is compliant with Dubai's real estate regulatory agency, RERA guidelines, and reflects the actual financial products available and regulated within the emirate. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves clearly explaining to the buyer that private mortgage insurance, PMI, as commonly understood in some other markets, is not a standard or directly regulated product within Dubai's real estate financing landscape. The broker should focus on the financing options and requirements as dictated by UAE federal laws and RERA regulations, including the loan-to-value (LTV) ratios set by the UAE Central Bank and the mortgage registration processes overseen by the Dubai Land Department (DLD). This approach ensures transparency, compliance with local regulations, and provides the buyer with accurate information about the financial products and processes applicable in Dubai. It avoids introducing concepts that may not exist or are regulated differently, thereby preventing confusion and potential misrepresentation. Incorrect approaches analysis. Advising the buyer that PMI is a mandatory requirement for all mortgages in Dubai is incorrect because it misrepresents the local regulatory environment. PMI is not a universally mandated product in Dubai. Mortgage approvals and terms are governed by the UAE Central Bank's regulations on LTV ratios and lender-specific policies. Suggesting it's mandatory could mislead the buyer into believing it's a legal prerequisite, which it is not. Recommending that the buyer seek PMI from a specific international insurance provider without verifying its applicability or regulatory standing within the UAE is also incorrect. This approach bypasses local regulatory oversight and could expose the buyer to products not recognized or regulated by UAE authorities, potentially leading to invalid coverage or unexpected costs. The broker's duty is to advise within the scope of the regulated UAE market. Explaining PMI as a way to guarantee loan approval, similar to how it functions in some other countries, is incorrect. While lenders assess risk, the primary mechanism for managing risk in Dubai mortgages is through the LTV ratios, down payment requirements, and the buyer's financial standing as assessed by the lending institution, all within the framework of RERA and UAE Central Bank directives. Presenting PMI as a direct guarantor of approval is a mischaracterization of the UAE's mortgage approval process. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and accurate information dissemination. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory environment of Dubai, including RERA and UAE Central Bank guidelines. 2. Identifying and clarifying the financial products and services that are genuinely available and regulated within that jurisdiction. 3. Communicating clearly and transparently with clients, avoiding jargon or concepts that may not have direct equivalents locally. 4. Focusing advice on the established processes and requirements of the Dubai real estate market, such as LTV ratios, down payments, and mortgage registration. 5. Consulting with mortgage professionals or financial institutions operating within Dubai when specific financing queries arise to ensure the advice provided is current and compliant. Question 6. Operational review demonstrates that a real estate broker in Dubai, UAE, is tasked with providing a valuation for a standard residential apartment in a well-established neighborhood. The property has been on the market for a reasonable period, and there have been several comparable sales of similar units in the immediate vicinity within the last 6 months. considering the nature of the property and the available market data. Which valuation method should the broker prioritize to ensure a professional and compliant assessment of the property's market value? Option A, cost approach, by calculating the cost to replace the apartment building and subtracting accrued depreciation. Option B, a hybrid approach combining elements of all three methods without a clear primary focus. Option C, income approach, by estimating the potential rental income the property could generate and capitalizing that income. Option D, comparative market analysis, by identifying and adjusting for differences between the subject property and similar recently sold properties in the same area. Correct answer is D, comparative market analysis, by identifying and adjusting for differences between the subject property and similar recently sold properties in the same area. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a real estate broker in Dubai, UAE, due to the inherent subjectivity in property valuation and the critical need to adhere to the Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations and ethical standards for brokers. The broker must provide a valuation that is not only accurate but also defensible and compliant with the principles of fair representation and professional conduct. The challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate valuation method given the specific property characteristics and market conditions, ensuring transparency and avoiding any misrepresentation that could lead to disputes or regulatory action. The most appropriate approach in this scenario is the comparative market analysis. This method is correct because it directly aligns with the principles of market-driven valuation, which is fundamental to real estate transactions in Dubai. The comparative market analysis involves comparing the subject property to similar recently sold properties in the same or a very similar location, adjusting for differences in features, condition, and amenities. This approach is supported by the general principles of real estate practice and is implicitly encouraged by regulatory bodies like the DLD, which aim for valuations that reflect current market realities. It provides a realistic and defensible estimate of market value by grounding the assessment in actual transaction data. The income approach is not the best primary method for this particular residential property because it is primarily designed for income-generating properties, such as commercial buildings or rental apartments, where the primary value driver is the potential for rental income. Applying it to a standard residential unit, where the owner's primary benefit is occupancy rather than direct income generation, can lead to an artificially inflated or misleading valuation if not carefully adapted, and it doesn't directly reflect the typical buyer's motivation for purchasing a primary residence. The cost approach is also not the most suitable primary method for this scenario. While it is useful for valuing unique properties or new constructions where comparable sales are scarce, it is less reliable for older residential properties. This is because it focuses on the cost to replace the property, which may not reflect the current market demand or the property's actual market value. Depreciation, obsolescence, and land value estimations can be highly subjective and may not accurately capture the nuances of the local Dubai residential market. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes the most relevant and reliable valuation method for the specific property type and market context. This involves understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each approach, considering the purpose of the valuation, and adhering to any specific guidelines set by the DLD. A thorough market analysis, supported by verifiable data, should form the foundation of the valuation, ensuring it is objective, transparent, and ethically sound. Question 7. Compliance review shows that a new client, unfamiliar with property investment, is seeking guidance on diversifying their portfolio. The real estate broker is tasked with explaining the fundamental nature and significance of real estate as an asset class within the United Arab Emirates. Which of the following explanations best fulfills the broker's professional and regulatory obligations? Option A. Real estate is simply property that can be bought and sold, and its value is primarily determined by market forces and the ease with which it can be transacted. Option B. Real estate is a commodity, much like stocks or bonds, whose price fluctuates based on supply and demand, and its main importance lies in its potential for quick capital appreciation. Option C. Real estate in the UAE is a tangible asset comprising land and any permanent structures attached to it. Its immobility, durability, and unique location contribute to its intrinsic value, making it a significant store of wealth, a potential source of income through rentals, and a cornerstone of investment strategies, all governed by specific UAE property laws. Option D. Real estate is any physical possession that an individual or entity owns, and its importance is solely tied to its market price at any given moment. Correct answer is C. Real estate in the UAE is a tangible asset comprising land and any permanent structures attached to it. Its immobility, durability, and unique location contribute to its intrinsic value, making it a significant store of wealth, a potential source of income through rentals, and a cornerstone of investment strategies, all governed by specific UAE property laws. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the real estate broker to navigate the delicate balance between client interests and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning the definition and importance of real estate as an asset. The broker must ensure that their advice and actions are grounded in a thorough understanding of what constitutes real estate under UAE law and how its unique characteristics impact valuation, investment, and legal frameworks. Misinterpreting or downplaying the significance of real estate can lead to misinformed decisions by the client, potential financial losses, and breaches of professional duty. The best approach involves a comprehensive explanation of real estate as a tangible asset with inherent value, emphasizing its immobility, durability, and unique characteristics that differentiate it from other asset classes. This explanation should highlight how these attributes influence market dynamics, investment potential, and legal considerations within the UAE. Specifically, it should cover the legal definition of real estate in the UAE, including land and any permanent structures attached to it, and its importance as a store of value, a source of income, rental yield, and a significant component of wealth for individuals and entities. This aligns with the regulatory expectation for brokers to act with integrity and competence, providing accurate and comprehensive information to clients to facilitate informed decision-making, as mandated by the UAE's real estate regulatory framework, which prioritizes transparency and client protection. An incorrect approach would be to broadly define real estate as simply property, without elaborating on its specific characteristics and legal standing in the UAE. This fails to convey the depth of understanding required and could lead the client to view it as interchangeable with other forms of property, neglecting the unique legal and investment considerations pertinent to real estate. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on the transactional aspect of real estate, such as the ease of buying and selling, without addressing its fundamental nature as a long-term, illiquid asset. This overlooks the importance of real estate as a stable investment and a significant component of a diversified portfolio, potentially leading clients to make short-sighted decisions. Finally, defining real estate merely as a commodity that fluctuates in price based on market demand, without acknowledging its intrinsic value and legal framework, is also professionally deficient. This perspective fails to educate the client on the underlying value drivers and the legal protections afforded to real estate ownership in the UAE, which are crucial for responsible investment. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes client education and informed consent. This involves first understanding the client's objectives and then providing clear, accurate, and comprehensive information about the nature of real estate as an asset class within the specific legal and economic context of the UAE. This information should be tailored to the client's level of understanding, ensuring they grasp the implications of real estate's unique characteristics on their investment decisions. Question 8. The evaluation methodology shows that a broker in Dubai is presented with a property that features multiple units designed for individual family occupancy, has amenities typically associated with residential living, and is zoned for residential purposes. However, the client suggests marketing it as a mixed-use development due to its proximity to a commercial hub and the potential for some units to be leased to small businesses. Which approach best aligns with UAE real estate regulations and professional ethics for categorizing this property? Option A. Classify the property as residential, emphasizing its primary design, zoning, and intended use for individual family occupancy, while advising the client on the limitations of marketing it as mixed use without official designation. Option B. Classify the property as residential, but allow the client to market it broadly as having mixed-use potential without specific clarification, to attract a wider range of buyers. Option C. Classify the property as mixed-use, prioritizing the client's suggestion and its proximity to a commercial hub, despite its primary design and zoning being residential. Option D. Classify the property as commercial, focusing on the potential for small businesses to occupy units and its location near a commercial area, disregarding its primary residential design and zoning. The correct answer is A. Classify the property as residential, emphasizing its primary design, zoning, and intended use for individual family occupancy, while advising the client on the limitations of marketing it as mixed use without official designation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because a real estate broker must accurately categorize properties to ensure compliance with UAE real estate regulations, particularly concerning disclosure, marketing, and potential zoning restrictions. Misclassification can lead to legal penalties, reputational damage, and financial losses for both the broker and the client. Careful judgment is required to understand the primary use and characteristics of each property type. The best professional approach involves meticulously analyzing the property's primary intended use and its physical characteristics to determine its classification under UAE real estate law. This includes considering factors such as zoning, infrastructure, and typical market expectations for each category. For instance, a property primarily designed for housing multiple families in separate units would be residential, while a building intended for retail operations or offices would be commercial. An industrial property would be characterized by its suitability for manufacturing, warehousing, or processing. An agricultural land would be designated for farming or related activities. This detailed assessment ensures accurate representation and adherence to all relevant Dubai Land Department (DLD) guidelines and Real Estate Regulatory Agency directives. An incorrect approach would be to classify a property based solely on its current temporary use without considering its inherent design and zoning. For example, labeling a vacant warehouse as commercial simply because it was briefly used for storage by a retail business would be a failure to adhere to the fundamental definitions of industrial property. Another incorrect approach is to categorize a property based on the client's personal preference or a speculative future use that is not officially sanctioned or reflected in the property's infrastructure or zoning. This disregards the legal and regulatory definitions that govern property types in Dubai. Furthermore, classifying a property based on its proximity to a certain district without verifying its specific zoning and intended use is also a significant error, as location alone does not dictate property type. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes due diligence and adherence to regulatory definitions. This involves 1. Understanding the core definitions of residential, commercial, industrial, and agricultural properties as stipulated by UAE law and RERA. 2. Thoroughly inspecting the property and reviewing all relevant documentation, including title deeds, zoning certificates, and building permits. 3. Consulting with relevant authorities or experts if there is any ambiguity. 4. Clearly communicating the property's classification and the rationale behind it to the client. Question 9. Compliance review shows that a real estate broker in Dubai is advising a client on a potential investment in a residential property. The broker has observed a recent uptick in property prices in the specific neighborhood. What is the most responsible and compliant course of action for the broker to take regarding the economic factors influencing this market trend? Option A. Focus exclusively on the historical sales data of comparable properties in the immediate vicinity, without considering any external economic influences. Option B. Conduct a thorough analysis of broader economic indicators such as interest rate movements, inflation, employment statistics, and government development plans in Dubai to contextualize the recent price increase and advise the client accordingly. Option C. Rely on informal discussions with other brokers and anecdotal evidence of high demand to justify the current price trend to the client. Option D. Advise the client that the recent price increase is a clear indicator of sustained market growth and recommend immediate purchase based solely on this observation. Correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough analysis of broader economic indicators such as interest rate movements, inflation, employment statistics, and government development plans in Dubai to contextualize the recent price increase and advise the client accordingly. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate broker in Dubai to navigate the complex interplay between economic indicators and their impact on property values, while adhering to the specific regulations governing real estate transactions in the emirate. The broker must demonstrate a nuanced understanding of market dynamics beyond simple price trends and consider the broader economic environment that influences buyer and seller behavior. This requires careful judgment to provide accurate and ethical advice to clients. The best professional approach involves a comprehensive analysis of multiple economic factors that influence the Dubai real estate market. This includes examining interest rate trends, inflation, employment growth, foreign direct investment, and government infrastructure projects. By synthesizing this information, the broker can form a well-reasoned opinion on market direction and potential property value fluctuations. This approach aligns with the ethical obligations of a real estate professional to act in the best interest of their clients by providing informed advice based on a thorough understanding of market conditions, as mandated by the Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations, which emphasize transparency and professional conduct. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on recent sales data without considering the underlying economic drivers. This fails to account for future market shifts and could lead to clients making decisions based on outdated or incomplete information, potentially violating DLD guidelines on providing accurate market assessments. Another incorrect approach is to rely on anecdotal evidence or speculation from other market participants. This lacks the rigor required for professional advice and can lead to misinformed decisions, contravening the DLD's emphasis on evidence-based market analysis. Finally, an approach that prioritizes short-term commission gains over accurate market forecasting by downplaying negative economic indicators is ethically unsound and breaches the duty of care owed to clients under Dubai's real estate laws. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the client's objectives, followed by a thorough research phase that incorporates both micro, property-specific, and macroeconomic factors relevant to the Dubai market. This research should be critically evaluated for its reliability and relevance. The findings should then be synthesized into clear, actionable advice, with potential risks and opportunities clearly communicated to the client. This systematic process ensures that advice is not only compliant with DLD regulations, but also ethically sound and truly serves the client's best interests. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate a tenant in a Dubai property managed by your brokerage has reported a significant plumbing leak requiring immediate attention. The tenant has provided an estimate from a local plumber for AED 7,500, which includes parts and labor. As the managing broker, you are required to obtain landlord approval for repairs exceeding AED 5,000 to ensure cost-effectiveness and adherence to best practices under Dubai regulations. You decide to solicit competitive bids. You receive 2 additional quotes. Plumber B quotes AED 6,800 with a 15% markup on parts, and Plumber C quotes AED 7,200 with a fixed labor rate of AED 2,000 and the remainder for parts. Assuming the initial tenant-provided estimate has a parts-to-labor ratio of 2:1, what is the percentage difference in cost between the highest and lowest *verified quotes for the repair, and which quote represents the lowest verified cost? Option A. The percentage difference is approximately 9.09% and Plumber C's quote represents the lowest verified cost. Option B. The percentage difference is approximately 6.67% and Plumber B's quote represents the lowest verified cost. Option C. The percentage difference is approximately 7.14% and Plumber B's quote represents the lowest verified cost. Option D. The percentage difference is approximately 5.26% and the tenant's initial estimate represents the lowest verified cost. The correct answer is C. The percentage difference is approximately 7.14% and Plumber B's quote represents the lowest verified cost. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for real estate brokers in Dubai, specifically concerning the management of maintenance and repair costs for properties under their care. The challenge lies in balancing the landlord's financial interests with the tenant's right to a well-maintained property, all while adhering to the specific regulations set forth by the Dubai Land Department, DLD, and other relevant authorities. Accurate cost estimation, transparent communication, and adherence to contractual obligations are paramount to avoid disputes and maintain professional integrity. The mathematical component adds a layer of complexity, requiring precise calculation and understanding of cost allocation principles. Correct approach analysis. The best approach involves a systematic and transparent process that prioritizes accurate cost assessment and clear communication. This includes obtaining multiple quotes from qualified service providers, verifying their credentials and pricing, and presenting a detailed breakdown of estimated costs to the landlord for approval before any work commences. This method ensures that the landlord is fully informed and has made a considered decision based on reliable information, aligning with the DLD's emphasis on transparency and fair dealings in property management. It also proactively addresses potential tenant concerns by demonstrating a commitment to responsible property upkeep. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately approving the tenant's requested repair without independent verification. This bypasses the landlord's right to approve expenditures and could lead to inflated costs or unnecessary work, violating the broker's fiduciary duty to the landlord. It also fails to comply with the typical contractual requirement for landlord approval of significant repairs. Another incorrect approach is to simply pass the tenant's estimated cost directly to the landlord without any due diligence. This demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and could result in the landlord paying more than necessary. It also fails to leverage the broker's expertise in sourcing competitive pricing and ensuring quality of service, potentially leading to disputes over the value received. A further incorrect approach is to delay the process by not obtaining quotes, hoping the issue resolves itself or that the tenant will cover the cost. This is unprofessional and can lead to tenant dissatisfaction, potential legal issues, and damage to the broker's reputation. It neglects the broker's obligation to facilitate timely and appropriate property maintenance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the contractual obligations and regulatory requirements. This involves 1. Thoroughly assessing the reported issue and its urgency. 2. Researching and obtaining multiple itemized quotes from reputable service providers. 3. Calculating the total estimated cost, including any applicable taxes or fees, using a clear formula. 4. Presenting a comprehensive report to the landlord, detailing the issue, proposed solutions, and cost breakdown with a clear recommendation. 5. Obtaining written approval from the landlord before proceeding with any repairs. 6. Maintaining meticulous records of all communications, quotes, invoices, and payments. This systematic approach ensures compliance, protects all parties, and upholds professional standards. Question 11. The audit findings indicate a recurring issue where real estate brokers in Dubai are presenting property ownership documents to potential buyers that have not been independently verified against the official records of the Dubai Land Department. What is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action for a real estate broker in this situation to ensure the integrity of property transactions? Option A. Only verify ownership documents if specifically requested by the buyer or their legal representative. Option B. Proactively verify the authenticity and accuracy of all ownership documents with the Dubai Land Department before presenting them to potential buyers or tenants. Option C. Rely solely on the documentation provided by the seller or their representative without independent verification, assuming it is accurate. Option D. Assume that ownership documents provided by established developers are automatically accurate and do not require verification. The correct answer is B. Proactively verify the authenticity and accuracy of all ownership documents with the Dubai Land Department before presenting them to potential buyers or tenants. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential challenge in ensuring that all property rights and ownership documentation presented by real estate brokers in Dubai are accurately verified against the official records maintained by the Dubai Land Department, DLD. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires brokers to navigate complex legal frameworks and maintain a high degree of diligence to prevent misrepresentation and protect client interests, while also adhering to the specific regulations governing real estate transactions in the Emirate. Failure to do so can lead to significant legal disputes, financial losses for clients, and reputational damage for the broker and their agency. The most appropriate approach involves proactively verifying the authenticity and accuracy of all ownership documents with the Dubai Land Department before presenting them to potential buyers or tenants. This includes confirming the registered owner's details, the property's legal status, any encumbrances or liens, and the validity of the title deed. This proactive verification directly aligns with Article 11 of the Real Estate Registration Law of the Emirate of Dubai, Law No. 7 of 2006, which mandates that all real estate transactions must be registered with the DLD to be legally valid. By ensuring all documentation is cross-referenced with DLD records, brokers uphold their duty of care, prevent fraudulent transactions, and ensure compliance with the Emirate's stringent property registration requirements. An alternative approach that is professionally unacceptable involves relying solely on the documentation provided by the seller or their representative without independent verification. This fails to meet the professional standard of due diligence required by the Dubai real estate market. Such an approach risks presenting inaccurate or forged documents to clients, violating the principles of transparency and good faith essential for ethical real estate practice in Dubai, and potentially contravening Article 12 of the Real Estate Registration Law, which emphasizes the importance of accurate registration. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to assume that documents presented by established developers are automatically accurate and do not require verification. Developers are generally reputable, legal and administrative errors can occur. Failing to verify ownership details with the DLD for properties developed by even well-known entities can still lead to complications, especially concerning off-plan sales or properties with complex ownership structures, thereby undermining the integrity of the transaction and potentially breaching the broker's fiduciary duty. Further professionally unacceptable approach is to only verify ownership documents if specifically requested by the buyer or their legal representative. This shifts the burden of due diligence away from the broker, who has a primary responsibility to ensure the legitimacy of the property being marketed. The Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA in Dubai, expects brokers to act with integrity and professionalism, which includes proactively ensuring the accuracy of property information, rather than waiting for a client to identify potential issues. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes client protection and regulatory compliance. This involves establishing robust internal procedures for document verification, maintaining up-to-date knowledge of Dubai Land Department regulations, and fostering a culture of meticulousness. When faced with any property transaction, the immediate step should be to cross-reference all provided documentation with official DLD records to confirm ownership, property status, and any associated liabilities. This proactive and diligent approach is fundamental to ethical and successful real estate brokerage in Dubai. Question 12. The audit findings indicate a common point of confusion among real estate brokers in Dubai regarding the fundamental distinctions between various property ownership structures. A potential buyer is inquiring about a commercial property and has expressed interest in understanding the extent of their rights and responsibilities. Which of the following explanations best reflects the accurate understanding of property ownership types as per Dubai's real estate regulatory framework? Option A. Fee simple ownership is primarily for residential properties and involves shared responsibility for maintenance with the Dubai Land Department. Leasehold ownership is only applicable for short-term rentals, and joint tenancy is the only legally recognized form of co-ownership. Option B. Fee simple ownership grants the holder indefinite rights to possess, use, and dispose of the property, whereas leasehold ownership grants the right to use and occupy for a specified period. For properties with multiple owners, joint tenancy implies survivorship rights, while tenancy in common allows for individual shares. Option C. Fee simple ownership is similar to a long-term lease, granting extensive usage rights but with ultimate ownership resting with the original developer. Joint tenancy and tenancy in common are essentially the same, both allowing for shared ownership without specific inheritance implications. Option D. Leasehold ownership is the highest form of property ownership in Dubai, granting perpetual rights similar to fee simple. Tenancy in common is the default for all multi-owner properties, automatically conferring survivorship rights to the remaining owners. The correct answer is B. Fee simple ownership grants the holder indefinite rights to possess, use, and dispose of the property, whereas leasehold ownership grants the right to use and occupy for a specified period. For properties with multiple owners, joint tenancy implies survivorship rights, while tenancy in common allows for individual shares. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential misunderstanding of property ownership structures among real estate brokers in Dubai, UAE. This scenario is professionally challenging because misinterpreting or misrepresenting ownership types can lead to significant legal disputes, financial losses for clients, and damage to the broker's reputation and the reputation of the real estate industry in Dubai. Accurate understanding and clear communication of these distinctions are paramount for ethical practice and compliance with Dubai's real estate laws. The correct approach involves clearly differentiating between fee simple ownership and leasehold interests, and explaining the implications of joint tenancy versus tenancy in common for multiple owners. Fee simple ownership, as recognized under Dubai's property law framework, grants the owner the most extensive rights, including the right to possess, use, and dispose of the property indefinitely. Leasehold, conversely, grants the right to use and occupy a property for a defined period, with ownership ultimately reverting to the freeholder. Joint tenancy and tenancy in common are crucial distinctions when multiple parties are involved. Joint tenancy implies a right of survivorship, while tenancy in common allows for individual shares and separate disposition. A broker must be able to articulate these differences accurately to clients, ensuring they understand the nature of the property rights they are acquiring or selling, in line with the principles of transparency and client protection mandated by the Dubai Land Department (DLD) regulations. An incorrect approach would be to conflate fee simple ownership with leasehold, implying that a leasehold interest grants the same perpetual rights as fee simple. This fails to acknowledge the temporal limitations inherent in leasehold agreements and violates the DLD's requirement for clear and accurate property descriptions. Another incorrect approach is to treat joint tenancy and tenancy in common as interchangeable, without explaining the critical difference in survivorship rights. This can lead to unintended inheritance outcomes and disputes among co-owners, contravening the DLD's emphasis on clear title and ownership clarity. Furthermore, presenting leasehold as a form of outright ownership without specifying the lease term is a misrepresentation that undermines client trust and violates ethical disclosure obligations. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that prioritizes client education and regulatory compliance. This involves thoroughly understanding the nuances of each ownership type as defined by UAE law, particularly Dubai's specific property regulations. When advising clients, brokers should use clear, unambiguous language, provide written explanations where necessary, and ensure that all documentation accurately reflects the type of ownership being transferred or held. A commitment to continuous learning and staying updated on DLD directives is essential for maintaining professional integrity and safeguarding client interests. Question 13. The performance metrics show a consistent trend of delayed contract finalization in the Dubai real estate market, impacting broker commission payouts and client satisfaction. A real estate broker in Dubai is presented with a situation where a potential buyer and seller have verbally agreed on a property price and basic terms. The broker, eager to secure the deal and earn their commission, proposes to proceed with the transaction based on this verbal understanding, suggesting they can finalize the formal written contract later. What is the most appropriate course of action for the broker to ensure the contract's enforceability and uphold professional standards in Dubai? Option A. Draft a simplified written summary of the verbal agreement for immediate reference, deferring the creation of a formal, legally binding contract until after the transaction has been substantially completed. Option B. Proceed with the transaction based on the verbal agreement, assuring the parties that the formal written contract will be prepared and signed at a later stage once initial steps are completed. Option C. Advise the parties that a verbal agreement is sufficient for proceeding and focus on facilitating the exchange of funds based on their oral understanding. Option D. Immediately draft a comprehensive memorandum of understanding (MOU) and subsequently a sale and purchase agreement (SPA) that clearly outlines all agreed-upon terms, payment schedules, and conditions, ensuring both parties review and sign these legally binding documents before any further steps are taken. Correct answer is D. Immediately draft a comprehensive memorandum of understanding (MOU) and subsequently a sale and purchase agreement (SPA) that clearly outlines all agreed-upon terms, payment schedules, and conditions, ensuring both parties review and sign these legally binding documents before any further steps are taken. Explanation. The performance metrics show a consistent trend of delayed contract finalization in the Dubai real estate market, impacting broker commission payouts and client satisfaction. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires brokers to navigate the complexities of real estate contracts while adhering to the specific legal framework of Dubai, ensuring both enforceability and ethical conduct. Misunderstanding contract elements or failing to comply with local regulations can lead to disputes, financial losses, and reputational damage. The best approach involves a thorough understanding and application of the core elements of a valid real estate contract as stipulated by Dubai law, including offer, acceptance, consideration, legal capacity of parties, and a lawful object. This means ensuring all terms are clearly defined, agreed upon by all parties, and documented in writing, typically through the Standard Memorandum of Understanding (MOU) and the Sale and Purchase Agreement (SPA), as mandated by the Dubai Land Department (DLD). Brokers must verify the legal capacity of both buyer and seller, ensure the property details are accurate, and that the agreed price and payment terms are unambiguous. This meticulous attention to detail and adherence to DLD guidelines ensures the contract is legally sound, enforceable, and protects the interests of all parties involved, thereby facilitating smooth transactions and timely commission. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on verbal agreements or informal understandings, even if parties seem to agree. Dubai law, particularly concerning real estate transactions, requires written contracts for enforceability. This failure to document the agreement in a legally recognized format renders it unenforceable and exposes the broker to significant risk. Another incorrect approach is to overlook the legal capacity of the parties, such as entering into an agreement with a minor or an individual lacking the legal authority to sell. This fundamental flaw invalidates the contract from its inception, as it lacks a crucial element of enforceability under Dubai law. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to include ambiguous or illegal terms within the contract, such as clauses that contravene public policy or specific DLD regulations. Ambiguity can lead to disputes over interpretation, while illegal terms render the contract void. Brokers must ensure all contractual provisions are clear, lawful, and align with the established legal framework for real estate transactions in Dubai. Professionals should adopt a systematic decision-making process that prioritizes legal compliance and clarity. This involves 1. Identifying all essential elements of a valid contract under Dubai law. 2. Ensuring all terms are clearly articulated and documented in writing, using DLD-approved formats where applicable. 3. Verifying the legal capacity and authority of all parties involved. 4. Confirming the lawful nature and enforceability of all contractual clauses. 5. Seeking legal counsel when in doubt about specific contractual provisions or legal requirements. Question 14. During the evaluation of a proposed commercial lease agreement for a retail unit in Dubai, UAE, a real estate broker is presented with a lease that broadly states the tenant's permitted use as general retail. The tenant, however, intends to operate a specialized artisanal food preparation business that involves on-site cooking and potential odor emissions. Broker is aware that Dubai municipality has specific regulations regarding food establishment and potential impact on neighboring properties. Which of the following approaches best addresses the broker's professional responsibilities in this situation? Option A. Suggest that the lease simply include a clause stating the tenant is responsible for obtaining all necessary permits for their business operations, without specifying the nature of those operations. Option B. Recommend that the lease agreement be amended to specifically detail the tenant's intended artisanal food preparation activities, including on-site cooking and any associated operational requirements, and ensure this aligns with Dubai municipality regulations and the landlord's permitted use clauses. Option C. Advise the parties to proceed with the lease as is, assuming general retail encompasses the tenant's intended activities and that any necessary permits are the tenant's sole responsibility. Option D. Recommend the broker inform the landlord of the tenant's general intention to operate a food-related business and leave the specifics of the lease clause to be resolved directly between the landlord and tenant without further broker involvement. The correct answer is B. Recommend that the lease agreement be amended to specifically detail the tenant's intended artisanal food preparation activities, including on-site cooking and any associated operational requirements, and ensure this aligns with Dubai municipality regulations and the landlord's permitted use clauses. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent complexities and potential for dispute in lease agreements, particularly when dealing with commercial properties and varying tenant needs. A real estate broker must navigate the specific legal requirements of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, ensuring all clauses are compliant with local laws and protect both landlord and tenant interests. Careful judgment is required to identify and address potential ambiguities or omissions that could lead to future legal entanglements. The best approach involves a thorough review of the proposed lease agreement, focusing on the specific clauses related to the tenant's intended use of the commercial space, and ensuring these align with the landlord's permitted uses and any relevant Dubai municipality regulations. This includes verifying that the lease clearly defines the scope of permitted activities, any restrictions, and the process for seeking amendments if the tenant's business evolves. This proactive stance ensures compliance with Article 7 of the Dubai Tenancy Law, Law No. 26 of 2007, as amended by Law No. 33 of 2008, which mandates that the leased property be used for the purpose for which it was leased, and that any deviation requires landlord consent and potentially adherence to further regulatory approvals. It also aligns with the ethical duty of a broker to facilitate a transaction that is legally sound and mutually beneficial. An approach that overlooks the specific nature of the tenant's business and simply includes a generic commercial use clause is professionally unacceptable. This fails to address the potential for the tenant's activities to violate zoning laws or landlord restrictions, creating a risk of breach of contract and potential eviction. Such an oversight neglects the broker's responsibility to ensure the lease accurately reflects the intended use and complies with all applicable Dubai regulations governing commercial property. Another unacceptable approach is to assume that any use not explicitly prohibited is permitted. This ignores the principle of specificity in contractual agreements and the potential for implied restrictions or landlord preferences that are not documented. It also fails to consider the broader regulatory landscape in Dubai, which may impose specific requirements on certain types of commercial activities. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed over diligence by accepting the tenant's draft without a detailed review of the permitted use clause is also professionally flawed. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold the broker's duty to both parties. It risks overlooking critical details that could lead to disputes, legal challenges, and reputational damage for the broker. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that emphasizes thoroughness and compliance. This involves understanding the specific needs of the tenant, the restrictions of the landlord, and the relevant legal framework in Dubai. A detailed review of all lease clauses, particularly those pertaining to property use, is paramount. When in doubt, seeking clarification from legal counsel or relevant authorities is a sign of professional integrity and responsible practice. Question 15. What factors determine the extent of environmental due diligence required for a commercial property transaction in Dubai, considering the Emirates' evolving environmental regulations and sustainability goals? Option A. Solely relying on the property's current operational permits and assuming no historical environmental liabilities exist. Option B. Proactively identifying potential environmental risks based on the property's location, historical use, and intended future use, and recommending appropriate assessments in line with Dubai municipality guidelines. Option C. Focusing exclusively on the immediate market value and rental potential of the property, disregarding any potential environmental concerns. Option D. Delegating all environmental compliance responsibilities to the client without offering any professional guidance or recommendations. The correct answer is B. Proactively identifying potential environmental risks based on the property's location, historical use, and intended future use, and recommending appropriate assessments in line with Dubai municipality guidelines. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a real estate broker in Dubai to navigate the intersection of commercial real estate transactions and evolving environmental regulations. The broker must balance the client's immediate financial interests with the long-term sustainability and legal compliance of the property. Failure to adequately consider environmental factors can lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and legal liabilities for both the broker and the client, underscoring the need for meticulous due diligence. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves proactively identifying and assessing potential environmental risks associated with the commercial property in Dubai. This includes understanding the implications of the Dubai municipality's environmental regulations, such as those pertaining to waste management, emissions, and sustainable building practices. The broker should advise the client on the necessity of conducting an environmental impact assessment, IA, if the property's intended use or existing condition suggests potential environmental concerns. This approach is correct because it aligns with the UAE's commitment to environmental protection and sustainable development, as outlined in national strategies and enforced by local authorities like the Dubai municipality. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence, client protection, and adherence to the legal framework governing real estate in Dubai. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely focusing on the immediate financial viability of the property and the client's stated intentions, without investigating potential environmental liabilities. This fails to acknowledge the regulatory landscape in Dubai, which increasingly integrates environmental considerations into property development and transactions. Such an approach could expose the client to future remediation costs, fines, or even the inability to obtain necessary permits, and the broker to professional negligence claims. Another incorrect approach is to assume that since the property has been in use for a long time, no environmental issues exist. This overlooks the fact that environmental regulations evolve, and historical practices may now be considered non-compliant or have left latent environmental impacts. Dubai's environmental laws are dynamic, and a static view of compliance is insufficient. A further incorrect approach is to delegate the entire responsibility for environmental compliance to the client without providing informed guidance. While the ultimate responsibility may lie with the property owner, a professional broker has a duty to inform their client about material risks, including environmental ones, and to recommend appropriate steps for assessment and mitigation, especially within the context of Dubai's specific regulatory requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to due diligence. This involves identifying potential environmental red flags early in the transaction process. For commercial properties in Dubai, this means being aware of relevant Dubai municipality guidelines and federal environmental laws. When potential issues are identified, the professional should recommend engaging qualified environmental consultants to conduct thorough assessments. Transparency with the client about potential environmental risks and the associated costs of mitigation or compliance is paramount. This proactive and informed approach safeguards the client's investment and upholds the broker's professional integrity and legal obligations. Question 16. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a client in Dubai, UAE, is seeking guidance on real estate investment strategies. Given the inherent cyclical nature of property markets, what is the most prudent approach for a real estate broker to advise this client on navigating potential market fluctuations and identifying opportune investment periods? Option A. Advise the client to invest heavily in properties that have shown the most significant price increases in the last 6 months, assuming this upward trend will continue indefinitely. Option B. Recommend a single, high-risk investment in a niche property segment that is currently experiencing rapid growth, without discussing diversification or the client's risk tolerance. Option C. Rely primarily on speculative forecasts from social media influencers and anecdotal reports from other investors about upcoming market booms. Option D. Conduct a thorough analysis of historical Dubai real estate market data, current economic indicators, and demographic shifts to identify the current phase of the real estate cycle and project future trends. Then present a balanced view of risks and opportunities with diversified strategies tailored to the client's profile. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough analysis of historical Dubai real estate market data, current economic indicators, and demographic shifts to identify the current phase of the real estate cycle and project future trends. Then present a balanced view of risks and opportunities with diversified strategies tailored to the client's profile. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a real estate broker in Dubai, UAE, as it requires them to navigate the complexities of real estate market cycles and trends while advising a client. The challenge lies in accurately interpreting market data, predicting future movements, and translating these insights into actionable, ethical, and legally compliant advice. Misinterpreting cycles or trends can lead to significant financial losses for the client and reputational damage for the broker, potentially violating their duty of care and fiduciary responsibilities under UAE real estate regulations. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a comprehensive analysis of historical market data, current economic indicators specific to Dubai, and relevant demographic shifts. This approach requires the broker to identify the current phase of the real estate cycle, e.g., expansion, peak, contraction, trough, and consider factors influencing future trends, such as government infrastructure projects, tourism growth, and foreign investment policies. The broker must then present this analysis to the client, clearly outlining potential risks and opportunities associated with each phase of the cycle, and offering diversified investment strategies tailored to the client's risk tolerance and financial goals. This aligns with the UAE's emphasis on transparency, informed decision-making, and acting in the best interest of the client, as mandated by the Real Estate Regulatory Agency, RERA guidelines for brokers. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely relying on anecdotal evidence or recent short-term price movements without a broader cyclical analysis. This fails to account for the inherent volatility and cyclical nature of real estate markets, potentially leading to ill-timed investments based on temporary fluctuations rather than sustainable trends. This approach neglects the broker's responsibility to provide informed advice grounded in comprehensive market understanding, potentially violating RERA requirements for professional conduct. Another incorrect approach is to focus exclusively on the potential for rapid capital appreciation, without adequately assessing the risks associated with market downturns or the specific phase of the real estate cycle. This can lead to a skewed presentation of information, prioritizing profit over prudent risk management. Such a focus can mislead the client into making decisions that are not aligned with their long-term financial security and may contravene ethical obligations to provide balanced and realistic advice. A further incorrect approach is to recommend a single, highly speculative investment strategy without considering diversification or the client's individual circumstances. This ignores the importance of risk mitigation and fails to acknowledge that different market cycles favor different types of real estate or investment strategies. This approach is unprofessional and potentially harmful, as it does not reflect a thorough understanding of market dynamics or the client's needs, and could be seen as a breach of the broker's duty to act with due diligence and in the client's best interest. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to market analysis. This involves gathering and interpreting a wide range of data, including historical performance, economic forecasts, demographic trends, and regulatory changes specific to the UAE. They must then synthesize this information to identify the current market cycle and potential future trends. Crucially, this analysis must be communicated to the client in a clear, understandable, and balanced manner, highlighting both potential rewards and inherent risks. The broker's advice should always be tailored to the client's specific financial situation, risk appetite, and investment objectives, ensuring that all recommendations are ethical, compliant with RERA regulations, and in the client's best interest. Question 17. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a real estate broker in Dubai is representing a client who has purchased a plot of land with the intention of developing a mixed-use project that includes residential apartments, retail outlets, and a small recreational park. The client has provided a general overview of their vision, but has not presented detailed architectural plans. The broker needs to advise the client on the feasibility of this project from a land use perspective. Which of the following actions represents the most prudent and legally compliant approach for the broker to take in Dubai? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the specific zoning regulations and land use plans applicable to the plot, verifying that the proposed mixed-use development aligns with the designated zoning and any associated development control regulations mandated by the Dubai municipality. Option B. Advise the client to proceed with detailed architectural designs and marketing materials, assuming that any necessary approvals will be obtainable through the standard development process in Dubai, without first confirming specific zoning compliance. Option C. Proceed with marketing the property for the client's intended mixed-use development, relying on the broker's general understanding of Dubai's diverse real estate market and assuming that such projects are broadly permissible. Option D. Accept the client's verbal description of the intended use and assure them that the project is likely feasible, given the general trend of mixed-use developments in the Emirate, without independently verifying the plot's specific zoning designation. Correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive review of the specific zoning regulations and land use plans applicable to the plot, verifying that the proposed mixed-use development aligns with the designated zoning and any associated development control regulations mandated by the Dubai municipality. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the real estate broker to navigate complex and potentially conflicting zoning laws and land use regulations in Dubai. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to these regulations can lead to significant legal repercussions, financial penalties for the client and the brokerage, and reputational damage. The broker must exercise due diligence to ensure the proposed development aligns with the Emirate's strategic vision for land use and environmental sustainability. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves conducting a thorough due diligence investigation into the specific zoning regulations and land use restrictions applicable to the plot in Dubai. This includes consulting official Dubai municipality zoning maps, land use plans, and any relevant development control regulations. The broker should verify that the client's proposed mixed-use development, incorporating residential, commercial, and recreational spaces, is permissible under the current zoning designation for that particular plot. This proactive approach ensures compliance from the outset, prevents costly future complications, and safeguards the client's investment by confirming the feasibility of their project within the legal framework of Dubai. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on the client's verbal assurances about the intended use without independent verification. This fails to meet the professional obligation of due diligence and exposes both the broker and the client to significant risk if the intended use is not permitted by Dubai's zoning laws. It bypasses the critical step of confirming regulatory compliance. Another incorrect approach is to proceed with marketing the property for the client's proposed mixed-use development based on general knowledge of Dubai's real estate market without verifying the specific zoning of the plot. Dubai's zoning is highly granular, and what might be permissible in one area could be strictly prohibited in another. This approach ignores the specific legal constraints of the property. A further incorrect approach is to assume that because similar developments exist elsewhere in Dubai, the proposed project will automatically be approved for this specific plot. Each plot has its own designated zoning and land use parameters, which are determined by the Dubai municipality and are subject to specific development controls. This assumption overlooks the detailed regulatory framework governing individual parcels of land. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to due diligence. This involves identifying all relevant legal and regulatory requirements, gathering necessary documentation from official sources, analyzing the information in the context of the client's objectives, and clearly communicating findings and potential risks to the client. When dealing with zoning and land use, consulting official government bodies and legal experts specializing in Dubai property law is paramount. Question 18. The efficiency study reveals that some real estate brokers in Dubai are actively involved in guiding borrowers on how to present their financial information to lenders, and in some instances are perceived to influence the speed of loan approvals through their relationships with specific financial institutions. Considering the regulatory framework governing real estate professionals in the Emirate of Dubai, which of the following actions by a real estate broker best aligns with professional and ethical obligations during the loan underwriting and approval process? Option A. Facilitating the borrower's communication with the lender, providing accurate property-related documentation as requested, and ensuring the borrower understands the lender's information requirements without offering financial advice. Option B. Leveraging personal relationships with loan officers at specific banks to expedite the approval process for their clients, potentially offering informal assurances about the borrower's financial stability. Option C. Advising the borrower on strategies to present their financial history in the most favorable light to the lender, including suggesting how to explain any past credit issues. Option D. Recommending specific loan products or lenders to borrowers based on potential referral fees or commissions, and downplaying the importance of the borrower's detailed financial disclosure to the lender. Correct answer is A. Facilitating the borrower's communication with the lender, providing accurate property-related documentation as requested, and ensuring the borrower understands the lender's information requirements without offering financial advice. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a common challenge in the UAE real estate market: the potential for brokers to exert undue influence during the loan underwriting and approval process. This scenario is professionally challenging because brokers, while facilitating transactions, are not licensed financial advisors or credit officers. Their primary duty is to their client buyer or seller, and any action that compromises the integrity of the loan approval process or misrepresents a borrower's financial standing to a lender is a serious ethical and regulatory breach. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the broker's role remains advisory and facilitative, without crossing into the domain of financial assessment or influencing lender decisions based on personal gain or incomplete information. The best approach involves the real estate broker acting solely as an intermediary, providing accurate and complete documentation to the lender as requested by the borrower, and facilitating communication between the borrower and the lender. This approach is correct because it adheres strictly to the principles of transparency and professional conduct mandated by the UAE real estate regulatory framework. Brokers are expected to act with integrity and honesty, and their involvement in the loan process should be limited to supporting the borrower's application by providing necessary property-related information and ensuring the borrower understands the lender's requirements. This upholds the separation of duties between real estate professionals and financial institutions, preventing conflicts of interest and ensuring that loan decisions are based on objective financial assessments by qualified lenders. An incorrect approach involves the broker actively advising the borrower on how to present their financial information to appear more creditworthy, or suggesting ways to omit or downplay certain financial liabilities. This is a regulatory failure because it constitutes providing financial advice without the necessary licensing and expertise, and it involves misrepresentation to the lender, which is a breach of trust and potentially fraudulent. Another incorrect approach is for the broker to leverage their relationship with a specific lender to expedite a loan approval, potentially by providing informal assurances about the borrower's financial situation or the property's value that are not formally documented or verified by the lender. This creates an unacceptable conflict of interest and undermines the lender's independent assessment process, violating principles of fair dealing and regulatory compliance. Furthermore, a broker pressuring a borrower to accept a loan from a particular lender based on a commission or referral fee, rather than the borrower's best financial interests, is an ethical failure and a violation of the broker's fiduciary duty to their client. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct. This involves clearly defining the scope of their professional responsibilities, understanding the boundaries between real estate brokerage and financial advisory services, and always acting in the best interest of their client, while maintaining transparency with all parties involved. When faced with situations that touch upon loan underwriting, brokers should refer clients to qualified financial institutions and professionals, and limit their own involvement to providing factual, property-related information and facilitating communication as directed by the borrower. Question 19. The efficiency study reveals that a real estate broker in Dubai is advising a first-time homebuyer on mortgage options. The buyer expresses concern about unpredictable monthly payments, but also mentions a desire to minimize initial outlays. Considering the regulatory framework for financial advice to consumers in the UAE, which of the following advisory approaches best balances the buyer's concerns with responsible financial guidance? Option A. Focus primarily on adjustable-rate mortgages, highlighting their potential for lower initial rates, and briefly mention fixed-rate mortgages as a less flexible alternative. Option B. Thoroughly explain the stability of fixed-rate mortgages, the potential for payment increases with adjustable-rate mortgages, and the principal repayment obligation at the end of interest-only mortgages, guiding the buyer to choose based on their stated concerns and risk tolerance. Option C. Provide a generic overview of all mortgage types without delving into the specific implications for the buyer's stated concerns about payment predictability and initial costs. Option D. Strongly recommend an interest-only mortgage to minimize initial outlays, emphasizing the lower initial payments without extensively detailing the principal repayment structure or potential future payment increases. The correct answer is B. Thoroughly explain the stability of fixed-rate mortgages, the potential for payment increases with adjustable rate mortgages, and the principal repayment obligation at the end of interest-only mortgages, guiding the buyer to choose based on their stated concerns and risk tolerance. Explanation: the efficiency study reveals a common challenge for real estate brokers in Dubai, effectively advising clients on mortgage types. This scenario is professionally challenging because a broker's advice directly impacts a client's long-term financial well-being and compliance with UAE central bank regulations. Misunderstanding or misrepresenting mortgage features can lead to significant financial distress for the buyer and potential legal repercussions for the broker. The broker must navigate complex financial products while adhering to ethical duties of care and disclosure. The best approach involves a comprehensive, client-centric consultation that prioritizes understanding the client's financial situation, risk tolerance, and long-term goals before recommending any specific mortgage product. This includes clearly explaining the fundamental differences between fixed-rate, adjustable-rate, and interest-only mortgages, highlighting the associated risks and benefits of each within the context of the UAE market and relevant regulations. For instance, a fixed-rate mortgage offers payment stability, which is crucial for clients prioritizing predictable budgeting, a key consideration under consumer protection guidelines. An adjustable-rate mortgage might appeal to those expecting income growth or planning a shorter ownership period, but the broker must thoroughly explain the potential for payment increases and the impact on affordability, aligning with disclosure requirements. An interest-only mortgage, while potentially lowering initial payments, requires a clear explanation of the repayment obligation for the principal amount at the end of the term and the associated risks if the client cannot meet this obligation, a critical disclosure point under financial advisory standards. An incorrect approach would be to push a specific mortgage product based on perceived ease of sale or commission structure, without a thorough client needs assessment. This fails to uphold the broker's fiduciary duty to act in the client's best interest and can lead to a mismatch between the mortgage product and the client's financial capacity, potentially violating consumer protection laws. Another incorrect approach is to provide only a superficial overview of mortgage types, omitting crucial details about payment fluctuations, long-term costs, or the repayment of principal. This lack of comprehensive disclosure is a direct contravention of the transparency expected under UAE financial services regulations and ethical codes. Furthermore, recommending an interest-only mortgage without a robust discussion about the client's strategy for repaying the principal at maturity, or without verifying their capacity to do so, constitutes a significant ethical and regulatory failure, as it exposes the client to undue risk. Professional reasoning in such situations requires a structured approach. First, actively listen to and understand the client's financial profile, objectives, and risk appetite. Second, educate the client on the available mortgage options, detailing their mechanics, pros, cons, and regulatory implications in the UAE. Third, guide the client to make an informed decision by helping them weigh the options against their personal circumstances, rather than making the decision for them. Finally, ensure all advice and explanations are documented. Question 20. Quality control measures reveal a real estate agency in Dubai is considering a new rental pricing strategy for its portfolio of apartments. The proposed strategy involves setting rental prices based on a combination of current market demand and a premium factor applied to properties in areas with a higher concentration of expatriate tenants from specific high-income countries. To assess the potential discriminatory impact of this strategy, the agency needs to perform a calculation. If the average rental price per square meter for comparable apartments in Area A, predominantly occupied by expatriates from country X, is ED 150, and the proposed premium would increase this to AED 180 per square meter, while the average rental price per square meter in Area B, predominantly occupied by expatriates from country Y, is ED 140, and the proposed premium would increase this to AED 160 per square meter. What is the percentage difference in the proposed premium applied to Area compared to Area B, relative to the original average price in Area B? Option A. The percentage difference in the premium applied to Area compared to Area B, relative to the original average price in Area B, is approximately 71%. Option B. The percentage difference in the premium applied to Area compared to Area B, relative to the original average price in Area B, is approximately 0%. Option C. The percentage difference in the premium applied to Area A compared to Area B relative to the original average price in Area B is approximately 15.00%. Option D. The percentage difference in the premium applied to Area A compared to Area B relative to the original average price in Area B is approximately 17.86%. Correct answer is D. The percentage difference in the premium applied to Area A compared to Area B relative to the original average price in Area B is approximately 17.86%. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential for indirect discrimination, which can be subtle and difficult to detect. Real estate brokers in the UAE must be acutely aware that seemingly neutral policies can have a disproportionately negative impact on protected groups, thereby violating the spirit and letter of anti-discrimination laws. The challenge lies in balancing business objectives with the absolute requirement to ensure fair housing for all individuals, regardless of their background. Careful judgment is required to identify and mitigate any discriminatory effects, even if unintentional. The best approach involves a proactive and data-driven method to assess the impact of rental pricing strategies on different demographic groups. This entails calculating the average rental price per square meter for comparable properties across various neighborhoods, and then analyzing if any proposed pricing strategy would disproportionately exclude individuals based on their nationality or any other protected characteristic, as defined by UAE law. For instance, if a strategy leads to a statistically significant higher average price per square meter in areas predominantly occupied by expatriates from certain regions compared to others, it could be considered indirectly discriminatory. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the potential for indirect discrimination by quantifying its impact and aligning with the UAE's commitment to equality and non-discrimination in housing. It allows for objective evaluation and adjustment of pricing to ensure fairness. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on market demand as the sole determinant of rental pricing without any further analysis. While market demand is a factor, failing to investigate its potential discriminatory impact is a regulatory failure. If this demand is artificially inflated or influenced by historical discriminatory practices, using it as the sole basis for pricing could perpetuate inequality. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a tiered pricing system based on perceived tenant income levels without a clear, objective, and non-discriminatory basis. Such a system, if not carefully constructed and monitored, could easily lead to discrimination based on nationality or other protected characteristics, as income levels can often correlate with these factors. This lacks the necessary objective justification and could be seen as a direct or indirect violation of anti-discrimination principles. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to dismiss tenant inquiries from specific nationalities based on anecdotal evidence or stereotypes about their ability to pay rent. This is a direct contravention of anti-discrimination laws and demonstrates a severe lack of professional judgment and ethical conduct. It is based on prejudice rather than objective assessment. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding and adhering to UAE's fair housing and anti-discrimination regulations. This involves 1. Familiarizing oneself with all protected characteristics under UAE law. 2. Proactively assessing all business practices, including pricing strategies, for potential discriminatory impacts, both direct and indirect. 3. Utilizing data and objective analysis to support decision-making. 4. Seeking legal counsel when unsure about the compliance of a particular practice. 5. Maintaining a commitment to ethical conduct and equal opportunity in all real estate transactions.